8, false imprisonment on Holmes Drive, a 1 to 10 year sentence. Count 9, criminal attempt to commit, 1 to 5 year sentence. So the minimum Greg McMichael is looking at is life with the possibility of parole and 35 years. That 35 years can be run concurrent, it can be probated, it can be suspended. The maximum Mr. Greg McMichael is looking at is count 2. The state is going to be asking for life without the possibility of parole. Counts 3, 4, and 5 are vacated by operation of law. Count 6 would merge into that life without the possibility of parole sentence, and the additional 35 years to be run concurrent consecutive, meaning count 7 concurrent with count 2, 20 years to serve. Count 8 concurrent to count 2, consecutive to count 7, and count 9, the 5 years to serve, concurrent with count 2, consecutive to count 8, resulting in a 35-year sentence to be run concurrently with the life without the parole sentence on count 2. With regard to Mr. Bryan was found not guilty of counts 1 and 2. He was, however, found guilty of the 3 felony murder counts, count 3, 4, and 5, based on aggravated assault with a pickup truck, false imprisonment, and criminal attempt at false imprisonment. The state is looking at a life sentence on count 3. Counts 4 and 5 would be vacated by operation of law. He was found not guilty on count 6. Therefore, count 7, the aggravated assault with the pickup truck, would merge into count 3, because count 3 is the felony murder based upon count 7. So count 7 would merge into count 3. Count 8, false imprisonment, potential 1 to 10 year sentence, and count 9, a potential 1 to 5 year sentence. Therefore, the minimum Mr. Bryan is looking at is a life with the possibility of parole sentence, plus an additional 15 years, which once again could be run concurrent, it could be run consecutive, it could be probated and or suspended. In this particular case, the state is going to make a recommendation for Mr. Bryan of life with the possibility of parole on count 3, with 15 years to serve consecutively on probation. And that is going to be our recommendation for Mr. Bryan. Your Honor, at this time, the state will go ahead and present its victim impact evidence for the court's consideration, and then once that's through, we will make our argument. Thank you. At this time, we're going to present Mr. Marcus Arbery.
I do want to make a point before we get into the victim impact statements, and not to imply that this would go any other way, but I do want to make sure that those that are addressing the court address the court as opposed to anybody else in the gallery. So let's go ahead and proceed. Good morning.
Good morning. How y'all doing? Right. It's a hard time with me and my family. You know, something that I just doesn't sit right with me at this time. The man who killed my son has sat in this courtroom every single day next to his father. I'll never get that chance to sit next to my son ever again. Not at a dinner table, not at a holiday, and not at a wedding. He'll never get to have I pray that no one in this courtroom ever has to do what we had did, that buried their child. There's no word for that, because no word knows that much pain. Not only did they lynch my son in broad daylight, but they killed him while he was doing what he loved than anything, running. That's when he felt most alive, most free. And they took all that from him. When I close my eyes, I see his execution in my mind over and over. I'll see that for the rest of my life. When I became a father, my life became bigger than me. It became about my family, about protecting him, protecting my boy. I know in my head that there's nothing I could have done that day to have saved my son, to have protected him from that evil and hate. But my heart is broken and always will be broken, because on my worst day or our lives wasn't there. If I could, I'd have traded places with Ahmaud in a heartbeat, but I can't. So I'm standing here today to do what he can't, and that is to fight for him, fight for his memories, his legacy, and to tell you who he was, because that's the one thing you didn't hear in this courtroom. And more than anything else, you should know who my boy was. We love our son, and we will never have him with us to celebrate anything. Thanksgiving, Christmas, or his birthday. His killers should spend the rest of their lives thinking about what they did and what they took from us. And they should do it from behind bars. Because me and my family, we got to live with his death the rest of our life. We'll never see Ahmaud again. So I feel they should stay behind them bars the rest of their life, because they didn't give him a chance. Thank the court. Thank y'all for what y'all did for our family stuck by. Thank the jury. I give all glory to God. Thank y'all.
Thank you, Mr. Arbery.
Ms. Jasmine Arbery.
Good morning. My name is Jasmine Arbery. Ahmaud is my brother, and I would like to tell you a little about him. Ahmaud had dark skin that glistened in the sunlight like gold. He had thick, curly hair, and he would often like to twist it. Ahmaud had a broad nose, and the color of his eyes was filled with melanin. He was tall with an athletic build. He enjoyed running and had an appreciation for being outdoors. These are the qualities that made these men assume that Ahmaud was a dangerous criminal and chase him with guns drawn. To me, those qualities reflected a young man full of life and energy, who looked like me and the people I love. Ahmaud was funny. He told jokes to lighten the mood because he was a positive thinker. Ahmaud had a big personality and never missed the opportunity to let it shine. Ahmaud had a future that was taken from him in an instance of violence. He was robbed of his life pleasures, big and small. He would never be able to fulfill his dreams, nor would he be able to start a family or even be a part of my daughter's life. The loss of Ahmaud has devastated me and my family. So I'm asking that the man that killed him be given the maximum sentence available to the court. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.
Ms. Wanda Cooper-Jones.
Good morning.
Good morning, Your Honor. I want to first speak directly to my son, if I please. This verdict doesn't bring you back, but it does help bring closure to this very difficult chapter of my life. I made a promise to you. Today, I laid you to rest. I told you I love you, and someday, somehow, I would get you justice. Son, I love you as much today as I did today that you were born. Raising you was the honor of my life, and I'm very proud of you. Your Honor, these men have chose to lie and attack my son and his surviving family. They each have no remorse and do not deserve any leniency. This wasn't a case of mistaken identity or mistaken fact. They chose to target my son because they didn't want him in their community. They chose to treat him differently than other people who frequently visited their community. And when they couldn't sufficiently scare him or intimidate him, they killed him. My youngest son, he was born on Mother's Day of 1994. He had a smile so bright it lit up a room. He was a greedy baby that seemed like he was always searching for something to stick into his mouth. He was always a loving baby who seemed to never tire of hugs, cuddling, and kisses. He loved. He never hesitated to tell me, his sister Jasmine, and his brother Marcus that he loved us. And Your Honor, we loved him back. He was messy. He sometimes refused to wear socks or take good care of his good clothing. I wish he would have cut and cleaned his toenails before he went out for that jog that day. I guess he would have if he knew he would be murdered. My family is gonna miss Ahmaud. We're going to miss his jokes, his impersonations, his warm smile. These men deserve the maximum sentence for their crimes. Ahmaud never said a word to them. He never threatened them. He just wanted to be left alone. They were fully committed to their crimes. Let them be fully committed for the consequences. Your Honor, I'm standing here before you as the mother of Ahmaud Arbery, asking you to please give all 3 defendants who are responsible for the death of my son the maximum punishment in this court, which I do believe is life behind bars without the possible chance for parole. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. Any additional evidence in aggravation from the state?
No more additional evidence from the state, Your Honor.
Argument?
Your Honor, the state is seeking life without the possibility of parole for the McMichaels based primarily on the evidence presented in this case. The state is not going to go through all of that evidence, just a few very important items. First off, there was a demonstrated pattern of vigilantism by Greg and Travis McMichael. First off, we have our July 13th, 2019 911 call after both of them went with guns to confront a homeless man who was living under the bridge, who they suspected must have been committing all of these crimes. Of course, all of these crimes included a lot of reports to 911 about suspicious persons, and as we heard from the witness stand and defense witnesses, a couple of unlocked cars with things stolen out of them by people outside the neighborhood. And then we have February 11th, 2020. Yes, Ahmaud went inside of the open, unsecured construction site that particular day. But Travis McMichael went home, got his father, they both got their guns, and then they went back down to that construction site. We know that because we heard the 911 call, and he says, I'm sitting outside the construction site. He talks about seeing somebody inside with a flashlight. The horrible part is we know from Brooke Perez, who testified for the defendants, that her husband had gotten a call from Larry English, and he'd gone over there with his handgun. We also know that the 2 men went inside with their handguns. It's a miracle they didn't shoot each other. And no one had called the police. Travis is outside in the pickup truck, finally calling the police. He stays on for about 4 minutes, and then Officer Ash appears. That didn't teach anybody here a lesson at all. Brooke Perez was trying to tell them, no, my husband's over there with a gun. Be careful, go in there. But Greg McMichael took off, according to Travis's statement, down the street and went right into that house. So we've got July 2019, February 11th, 2020. Not calling 911 first, not staying home, but wanting to seek out, in a vigilante manner, a confrontation with people that they suspect might be doing something that they themselves, up until January 1st of 2020, had not been the victim of. In all cases, they took firearms with them, did not stay home, did not allow the police to do their job, but instead, as on February 11th, Greg McMichael went in and started searching the house himself. We all know how that could have turned out terribly for him, for anyone in there, and for Diego Perez. All the decisions they made that led up to the death of Ahmaud Arbery. There were so many opportunities to stop, to think. And here's the real problem. Greg McMichael was former law enforcement, as they pointed out repeatedly. And Travis McMichael had served in the Marines. Not the Marines, the Coast Guard, as they pointed out repeatedly. So here we have some men who should have known better. Should have known better. Vigilantism always goes wrong. You wait for the professionals to show up. The professionals who are in marked cars, the professionals who are in uniforms, the professionals who are going to do it right because they have something to lose, the professionals with body cams, the professionals such as Officer Rash, who just would have stopped Mr. Arbery and said, hey, I'm going to put you on the phone with Larry English so Larry English can tell you to please not to come back. And they should have known that. They had alternatives. They had choices. But instead, Travis McMichael, who stated he was putting his son Everett down for a nap, who stated that his father had all these medical and health problems, didn't say, no, Dad, I'm putting Everett down. No, Dad, you need to stay here. He grabbed his shotgun, which he stated was propped up in a corner in that house, to go with his father. And Greg McMichael was willing to get into that pickup truck and sit in a child's seat to go chase after Mr. Arbery. Greg McMichael attempted to control the narrative from the get-go at the scene. His statements were all about how they were justified, how it was self-defense, how Mr. Arbery attacked his son. When the unknown man came up to Greg McMichael at the scene, because of course the police hadn't put Mr. McMichael anywhere, told him not to talk to anybody, he was running around the scene talking to everybody. And when talking to this unknown man who walked up to give him water, he basically said, no, this guy's an asshole. He is 20 feet from Mr. Arbery's body, referring to Mr. Arbery as an asshole. There's been no remorse shown, and certainly no empathy from either man. Because empathy would have said, hey, how must this look to this person that we're chasing? Are we terrifying this person? Are we scaring them? No empathy for the trapped and terrified Ahmaud Arbery. There was thoughtlessness as to the consequences, thoughtlessness as to the alternatives, there was vigilantism. And because of that, we are asking for Travis McMichael and Greg McMichael to be sentenced to life with the possibility of parole. Travis McMichael on count 1, malice murder. Greg McMichael on felony murder count 2, with the prior sentences or the underlying charges to run concurrent consecutive per the state's prior statement. The state is going to guess that the defense will probably say that these men served their country, they served the community. Travis in the Coast Guard, Greg McMichael at the district attorney's office, but we all know it is not the 99 things you do right, not the 99 good deeds that you do, but when you take another person's life, it can't be undone, it can't be taken back, there is no do-over. It's final, and that means caution must prevail. Thoughtfulness, empathy, and insight must prevail, not vigilantism. With regard to Mr. Bryan, his actions speak for themselves. He contributed to the death of Ahmaud Arbery in a significant way. The court is familiar with his actions. The court is familiar with his statements, with his level of cooperation with Agent Seacrest afterwards. And given his actions and statements in this case, the state is asking for a life with the possibility of parole sentence. And that would be on count 3 with 15 years consecutive on probation for Mr. Bryan. Thank you, Your Honor.
Yeah. Mr. Rubin.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, for 150 years, judges in cases in which defendants were convicted of murder were authorized to impose a life sentence That was the only sentence available. In 2009, the legislature expanded the judge's discretion and now allows a judge to impose both a life sentence with the possibility of parole and a life sentence without the possibility of parole, and gives absolutely, as Mr. Goff pointed out, no guidance to the court as to what factors to take into account when differentiating between people convicted of murder. But I know this court, Your Honor, has been on the bench long enough and has tried a number of cases, including murder cases, in which you've had to make those decisions. And you've had to differentiate between defendants and be consistent in your rulings, in your sentencing, probably the hardest thing any court has to do, which is to sentence a person to time in prison. In this case, in which the state is seeking the harshest possible sentence allowable under the law, we're asking the court to reserve the harshest possible sentence under the law for those who deserve it, for the worst of the worst. When the facts of the crime show a darkness of soul, a person so depraved and heinous as to shock the conscience by their actions, or where the offender is such a danger as evidenced by his past conduct, or by his actions post-offense, such that rehabilitation is remote or impossible, those are the offenders who deserve the harshest possible punishment under the law. Those are the offenders who people would argue deserve to spend the rest of their lives in prison. Neither of those scenarios encompasses Travis McMichael or the conduct for which he was convicted. And like Ms. Donikoski, I want to spend just a couple minutes reviewing the conduct for which he was convicted, because I agree with something she said, maybe for the first time in this trial. Travis McMichael woke up on that Sunday morning with his son Everett in his house. His goal was not to go out and kill somebody. His goal was to play with his kid. When he sat down for lunch with Everett, possibly with Greg and his mom, Lee, and sister Lindsay, his goal was not to commit a crime that day or kill somebody that day. His goal was to have a family afternoon. And when he was putting his son down at 1 o'clock or so in the afternoon, he was doing what every single person wants to and should be doing, which is taking care of their toddler son. When he got in the truck at his father's behest to find out who that person was sprinting down the road, his goal still was not to commit a crime. His goal still was not to hurt that person, but to merely investigate, to find out what was that guy doing back at the house where Matt Albenzi was motioning. And then 4 minutes later, Mr. Arbery's dead, Mr. McMichael's covered in blood, and we have what we have here and what the jury heard. And he was convicted. The jury found that his actions constituted malice murder, felony murder, and the underlying felonies. But this is not a case in which he just targeted someone recklessly, targeted someone without knowledge, misidentified someone. He knew Ahmaud Arbery. He had encountered him previously. And he had known about the fears that the neighbors felt at Mr. Arbery's continued presence. I'm not going to retry the case. The jury found that those facts did not add up to probable cause and did not justify Mr. McMichael's actions. But he didn't just go out and shoot Mr. Arbery. He only fired the shots, the fatal shots, when Mr. Arbery came at him and grabbed the gun, as Dr. Donahue demonstrated. These were not, and as reckless as those acts may have been, as Ms. Donikoski pointed out, as thoughtless as they may have been, they are not evidence of a soul so blackened as to deserve to spend the rest of his life in prison. This was not a planned murder. This was not a murder involving torture. It was a fight over a gun that resulted in Mr. Arbery's death. And for that, the jury found Mr. McMichael guilty. The state contends that 99 good acts don't overcome one bad act. And of course, legally that's true. Mr. McMichael is now a convicted felon. But 99 good acts do weigh in this court's consideration, do factor into what choice this court is going to make when sentencing Mr. McMichael to either spend the rest of his life behind bars or give him the possibility of redemption. And those acts, those 99 good acts, the court heard about those in the bond hearing. The court heard that during his time as a lifeguard at a camp for kids who have family members with terminal illnesses, that Travis McMichael actually saved the life of a boy who was drowning in the pool. The court heard that Mr. McMichael, while serving in the Coast Guard, literally saved the lives of family members who were on a boat that was taking on water. The court heard that Mr. McMichael saved the crew of a Coast Guard vessel while serving in the Coast Guard. The court heard of the letters of commendation given to Mr. McMichael by his superiors for various acts that the superiors said show superior dedication, selfless devotion to duty and consideration of others, and adherence to our core values, honor, respect, and devotion to duty. They don't excuse anything that happened on February 23rd, but when the court is weighing in the scales of justice what people deserve to spend their lives and then die in prison versus those people who deserve to be punished but then hold out hope for redemption, those are the acts the court should consider. Mr. McMichael was a devoted father to Everett. He had Everett 50% of the time, shared custody with Everett's mom, and in fact, early on was shown to be the more reliable parent, although I know that changed over time with his mom stepping up. He was a friend to many people who are now too scared to come to court and speak on his behalf. As the court knows from the testimony it heard in trial and at the bond hearing, he was always a hard worker, always had a job, never laid around letting other people support him, always paid taxes, always supported his community in a variety of ways. The discovery that we received is replete with FBI and GBI interviews of people in his community, people who told law enforcement officials of the times Mr. McMichael helped them when they were having problems, when their boat became unmoored, or when their docks were pulled off from storms, and Mr. McMichael was out there finding those things and bringing them back to the owners, or helping other people in the community, just as he thought he was doing on February 23rd. Actions that, in hindsight, turned out to be thoughtless, as Ms. Stunikoski said, or reckless, but were not evidence of an abandoned and malignant heart. Nothing in Travis McMichael's life suggests that he's a danger to society now, or will be a danger to society 30 years from now, after he has time to think, to work, to grow. When he's in his 60s, older than me right now, do we still want a person like Travis McMichael behind bars? There's nothing in his post-offense conduct that shows that he's either mentally unstable or a sociopath. He cooperated fully with police. He told the police everything he knew to tell them because he thought he was doing the right thing, even if that thing turned out not to be right. He and Greg McMichael thought they were helping their community. They thought they were helping the police catch someone who inexplicably had been in a house, and we still don't know what he was doing in the house, on 4 or 5 different occasions. He never fled. He never tried to obstruct the investigation. When he talked to his neighbors about what happened, he always expressed remorse and disbelief. If life without parole is reserved for the worst of offenders, those who are so scary, so unpredictable, and so likely